Reborn back in 1983, the first thing I did was charge into my first love's house, pin her in the corner, and kiss her. In my previous life, I chickened out over a 200 yuan bride price, and she ended up marrying a drunkard, was beaten blind, and hanged herself at the entrance of the village. In this life, even if the king of heaven himself came, it wouldn't matter. I'm marrying this woman no matter what. When I opened my eyes, my mom's familiar nagging was still ringing in my ears. Son, I've already asked that old village quack. That girl from the Lin family is definitely going blind. Even like this, they're still asking us for a 200 yuan bride price. Has the Lin family gone crazy from poverty? Listen to Mom, we're not marrying this girl. My youngest son is so handsome. Are you really afraid you won't find a wife? I didn't answer, just stared fixedly at the ceiling. A heavy cotton quilt was on me, and beneath me was the heated Kong. When I turned my head, Mom was sitting on the edge of the Kong mending a shoe sole, rubbing the needle in her hair before continuing her nagging. Dad had a dry tobacco pipe in his mouth and was dragging his lame leg as he nailed torn plastic sheeting over the window. At the far end of the Kong, my little sister was hugging her knees and clutching a handful of ankle bones, while my little brother, with snot hanging from his nose, grinned foolishly at me. By my feet, the big black cat crawled out and yawned. I pinched myself hard. It hurt. It really hurt. This wasn't a dream. I was back. In my previous life, it was this very day. Because the marriage didn't work out, I came down with a high fever and then made a clean break with that girl. Later, she got married, went blind, and her husband was a drunkard who beat her whenever he got drunk. She gave birth to a daughter, had no standing in the family, and within a few years hanged herself from the old poplar tree behind the village. The year after that, her daughter died of illness and was thrown into the ditch outside the village. And what about me? I went out to make my way in the world, and when my parents died, I was in prison. After half a lifetime of ups and downs, I got married and raised a son and a daughter, only to find out at my death that neither child was mine. At the moment I closed my eyes, my mind was full of that girl in the flower-patterned cotton jacket. And now heaven has really sent me back. Mom. Huh. Lin Xiaoer is the best girl for miles around. Mom rolled her eyes. Yes, the girl's hardworking and pretty, but she's about to go blind. No matter how good she is, what's the use? Are you going to support a blind woman for the rest of your life? I said nothing and threw off the quilt to get up. I yanked my little sister over and planted a hard kiss on her cheek. She shrieked and struggled. Then I pulled my little brother over and rubbed his head so hard it made his scalp hurt, and the little guy started bawling. Then I went to grab that big black cat and got clawed across the face. The room instantly erupted. Girl crying, kids yelling, cat leaping about. Laughing loudly, I jumped off the Kong and pulled on my black quilted pants, threw on my blue cotton jacket, shoved my feet into felt boots, and rushed out amid the family shouting. The greater Xin'an Mountains were a vast expanse of snow beneath a gloomy sky. The village air carried the smell of gunpowder and the smoky scent of burning wood. I headed straight for the east end of the village, barged into that house, and yanked up the girl in the flowered jacket who was washing her face. She screamed in fright. Her mother ran out from the inner room. Child, why are you here? Auntie, I'm here to see Xiaoer. A 7 or 8-year-old boy stuck his head out from the inner room and shouted fiercely, without 200 yuan. Don't even think about marrying my sister. Get lost. The middle-aged woman kicked him back into the room and said with an embarrassed look, Child, there's a reason for this, I know. I cut her off. Uncle Lin's illness is on me. Xiaoer's illness is on me too. I pulled the girl over and stared fixedly into her red, swollen eyes. She was still as beautiful as in my memory. Her pretty face was rosy fair, her features regular and dignified, with an intellectual gentleness. Xiaoer, nothing is a problem. As long as you marry me, all right? She turned her head timidly to look at her mother. If you say yes, then yes. Even the king of heaven himself couldn't change it today. I wrapped an arm around her waist and fiercely kissed her on the lips. She struggled free, her face so red it looked ready to drip blood. Auntie, it's settled. I turned and left. That little brat chased after me and threw chunks of snow, so I turned back, grabbed him, flipped him upside down, and stuffed him into a snowdrift. Damn it, when your sister was being bullied in the last life, you acted like you were deaf and blind. You're no good either. With my little brother-in-law wailing behind me, I arrived at a house at the back of the village. A short, thick-set, dark-faced man rushed out holding a 4-tined pitchfork, and behind him an old man with a goatee was hopping mad and cursing. Lichio, get your ass back here. If you dare step out that door, I'll break your legs and shove them up your ass. When the dark-faced man saw me, He threw down the pitchfork and burst out laughing as he grabbed my waist and spun me around. I knew you were okay. So it was you Brad, who caused all this commotion. This was Dulicio, my childhood friend, a brother who'd go through life and death with me. He got a fever as a child and it damaged his brain, so he was a bit slow. But it was this simple-minded brother of mine who, on the night before he died peacefully at 50, split the 300,000 yuan he had saved over a lifetime into two parts, one left to the village and one entrusted to someone to pass on to me. By then I hadn't seen him for more than 20 years. He was afraid I wasn't living well. Later, that money was transferred away without a trace by my selfish wife. I waved a hand at the goateed old man. Eighth Grandpa, Licio and I are heading out for a bit, and we'll bring you back some good wine and good food. Fuck you. What the hell can you bring me? Old Eight snapped, hopping mad. Ha ha ha. Then we'll bring Eighth Grandpa a dick back. Old Eight froze. That little bastard used to call him Old Baldy Eight, but today he actually called him Eighth Grandpa. Once we left the village, Dulicio stuffed a jar of glistening fried, pickled rutabaga into my hands, then dug a big basket out of a snowbank, with an axe, knives, and rope already inside. His face was red with excitement. Tanger, everything's ready. Let's go hunt a black bear and show that old bastard what kind of men we are. My eyes grew hot. In the last life, up until the day he died, he had never stopped thinking about this bear hunt that never happened. He said that if we'd gone bear hunting that time, with Tang He's ability, life might have turned out differently. In his eyes, I was the smartest person in the world. But in the end, I let him down. We walked in the mountains all day, and by the time it was fully dark, the temperature had dropped to more than 30 degrees below zero. We dug out a snow pit, dragged over dead trees, and lit a campfire. Dulicio took out some mixed grain steamed buns, stuffed them with pickles, and toasted them over the fire. I took a hard bite, the fragrance of the grain mixing with the salty savoriness, so delicious I couldn't help humming. Damn, that really hit the spot. Everyone was poor in those days, but poverty in the greater Xin'an range was different. This place had vast land and few people. Some of the meadows were as wide as 3 kilometers, and the black soil layer was 1 or 2 meters deep. The large stretches of farmland that had been opened up were measured in shang. There wasn't any money on hand all year round, but no one starved. I slept especially soundly that night, completely deeply asleep. The next day, we reached the riverbank. Beneath a fallen old pine was a huge den, and white frost hung on the trunk. Tanger, what do we do? Dulicio asked. Do it head on. We cut down several pine poles and sharpened the ends. I lit a string of firecrackers and threw it into the den, then gripped a pine pole and waited. The hibernating black bear was startled awake, roaring as it crawled out. The moment its pitch-black huge head emerged, Dulicio and I crossed our pine poles and jammed them against its neck. But when I saw that bear head nearly half the size of a person and the faint crescent-shaped patch of white fur beneath its neck, my whole body went cold. Damn, it wasn't a black bear, it was a man-eating bear. This thing is also called a brown bear, and it can easily weigh over 1,000 jin. With a furious roar, it whipped out one massive paw, and the 2 pine poles as thick as arms shattered like crisp shells. The brown bear leaped out, its huge paw carrying the sound of wind and thunder as it struck at me. Only one thought remained in my mind. I'm completely screwed this time. Dulicio yanked me hard. I fell flat on my ass to the ground, the bear's paw missing me, its sharp claws grazing past my face with a burning sting. Tanger, run for your life. Splash. The two of us scrambled and tumbled, falling into the icy river. The river was frozen 1 or 2 meters thick, but where the current ran swift, it never froze all year round. The piercing cold instantly stiffened my limbs, like countless steel needles stabbing my whole body. At minus 30 or 40 degrees, once you fall into the river, what the hell kind of running for your life is left? Dying under a bear's claws would be more comfortable. With a thunderous crash, the brown bear weighing over 1,000 jin jumped into the river after us, roaring as it lunged our way. With a ripping sound, my whole body was sent flying, and I crashed hard into the snowy crust on the riverbank more than 10 meters away. When I looked up, Dulicio had also scrambled ashore and dropped stiffly onto the ground, still shouting, "Tanger, play dead." That move scared me so badly I sprang up on the spot. This was a brown bear that had been hibernating for 3 or 4 months and was crazed with hunger. What the hell good would playing dead do? The brown bear burst out of the current, bit down on Dulicio's belly, then jerked its head and tore. Shreds of cotton batting flew everywhere, and Dulicio, weighing a bit over 100 jin, was flung more than 20 meters like a rag doll. The brown bear roared and shook its head, its wet fur blocking its vision. I let out a roar, rolled over, snatched up the axe, and hurled it at it, striking its back. It turned around at once, reared up on its hind legs, and charged at me. I grabbed the sharpened pine pole and braced one end against the ground, aiming it at its chest like a spear. Thud! The brown bear slammed into it, and the arm-thick pole bent with a creak. In my desperate roar, the pole snapped straight again, and with a wet thrust drove into the crescent-white patch of fur beneath its neck. The brown bear's enormous head slammed into mine, and its gaping bloody maw engulfed half my head. Boom! The 1,000-gene brown bear pressed me down into the snow. The stench hit my nose. Every bone in my body crackled, my vision went black, and when I couldn't catch my breath, it felt like my whole self was floating away. Tanger, Tanger, don't die. Dulicio's wailing dragged me back. I looked at his face streaming with tears and snot, drool almost dripping onto my face, and I hugged him hard. Damn, I really made it back. The two of us burst into loud sobs. But in the old forest at -30 or 40 degrees, icicles had formed on the cotton jackets we were wearing. The cotton batting on Dulicio's chest had been clawed out, leaving a large blue-purple bruise that was from the bear's swipe. Good thing we were dressed thick in winter, and the clothes had been soaked through with water, otherwise his heart and lungs would have been torn out too. Hurry, dig a snow pit, start a fire. We stripped off our soaking wet cotton jackets and, shivering, dragged over deadwood. The cold wind cut to the bone, like needles stabbing. By the time I dragged back a section of deadwood, I was almost frozen stiff. I pulled out the matches and tipped them over. Water poured out with a splash. The matchbox slipped from my hand. Now we're really screwed. Heaven gave me a chance to start over. I didn't die hunting the bear, only to freeze to death here. Licio, oh, being able to see you again, to see Shoer, is really good. Tanger, I'm cold. I'm cold too. In a haze, that harsh, selfish face floated before me, lips opening and closing non-stop, accusing me of being good for nothing. Yeah, the child isn't biological, it's all my fault. But heaven, please don't let me go back. Dying in this dream wouldn't be so bad. Whoosh. The flames surged up. My body suddenly felt light. My chest was burning hot, my back ice cold. A pair of big hands kept rubbing my body with icy snow, not even sparing my dick. Dulicio and I were naked, wrapped in a big fur coat, and huddled by the fire. The white-bearded old man propped up the deadwood with stones, and the fire immediately blazed stronger. Not far away, a mighty Mongolian mastiff and an ugly mottled dog were tearing at the brown bear with a pole stuck in its chest. The old man pulled out a knife and gutted the bear. He cut out the bear gallbladder and tied it off tight, rubbed it with snow, and held it up to the sunlight for quite a while. Which family's young men are you? So fierce, daring to hunt a bear with just an axe? The old man asked in a hoarse voice. Woliu village, Tang He, Dulicio. Ah, little Tang family's youngest son, old Bada family's foolish boy. Your guts are really fucking huge. The old man said, Shandong village, Qin Dabangzi. I froze. That name sounded like a protagonist's. Dulicio said with a shiver, Qin Dabangzi? The old man got annoyed. Fuck. I've spent my whole life patrolling the mountains and hunting without ever making a name for myself, and yet this big stick became known everywhere. Qin Dabangzi cut off some bear liver to feed the dogs, then sliced a few strips of bear ribs, skewered them on branches, and roasted them over the fire. He took out a bottle of soybean paste, grabbed some dry grass to dip and smear it on. Bear fat sizzled and dripped oil, the savory paste overpowering the gamey stink, and the aroma was mouth-watering. Hurry and eat something hot, or you won't last until your clothes dry and you'll be dead for sure. The two of us wolfed down the bear meat. He then heated up some melted snow water. After several skewers of bear meat and a few sips of hot water, the tops of our heads started to sweat. Bear meat is extremely heating. At 18 or 19, a young guy's release can hardly keep up, so who needs tonics? Just now we were frozen half to death, but with the fire baking us and the bear meat in our mouths, we came back to life. He directly tossed me the pouch with the bear gallbladder. Fine gall, even better than a bronze gall. Calling it a golden gall wouldn't be far off. Don't let it go for less than 500 kwai. Don't undersell it. I took it happily. I'm not selling it. I'm using it to treat my wife's eyes. Qin Dabangzi gave me a long, deep look, then divided up the bear meat. He took a portion of the bear paws and bear hide, then cut off the bear's nose and tongue too, saying they were for treating his wife's illness. Grandpa Qin is solid. I agreed readily. Dulicio stiffened his neck and wanted to speak, but I kicked him. There are rules in the mountains. Hogging the spoils is a major taboo. Deep in the old forests, greeting people with a smile, and knowing how to share is never wrong. When I got home, Mom grabbed a spool board and beat me with it. She didn't even have time to pull the needle out. I yelped and howled. Even with the thick cotton coat on, it didn't hurt that much. But I just wanted her to hit me a little longer. My little sister and little brother stared at the bare meat, their eyes shining. Looking at their youthful faces, I just couldn't make them line up with the cold, hate-filled faces in my memory. It's all my own damn fault. Little sister Tang Li was excellent at math, good enough to get into a top university in the 1990s. Little brother Tang Shu was a bit slow in school, but he was very good at reading people, with extremely high EQ. But both of them were held back by me. A whole lifetime wasted in mediocrity. Tang he felt a pang of bitterness in his heart, but the smile on his face grew broader. He crooked his finger and said, "Little sis, come here, let your brother give you a kiss. Little bro, come here, let your brother ruffle your hair. And also, tonight the cat sleeps in my bedding." The black cat, which had been stretching its neck to sniff the bare meat, jerked its head around and looked at Tang He in surprise. What the hell? How did this involve me too? Tang Li stepped forward unwillingly and held up her face, letting Tang He plant a hard kiss on it. Tang Shu wore a mournful chubby face. Getting his scalp rubbed really hurt. At home, on the Kong stove sat a large 12-riveted pot, and on the burner sat a small 8-riveted pot. The greasy fat from the brown bear was cut into small pieces and simmered with a small amount of water. At first there was an unpleasant fishy rank smell, but as the moisture cooked away and the fat rendered out, making sizzling bubbles, all that remained was the scorched fragrance of the oil. Li Shuhua rendered the fat with a face full of joy, deftly kneaded the dough, directed Tang Dashan to fish out the pickled cabbage and chop the filling, and then sent the children off to invite old Fan, Xiao Zheng and his wife, and also old Badu and the father and son, to come over for dinner. This place was full of pioneer settlers, without many clans or relatives around. When people got along well, they were even closer than kin. In those days, it wasn't easy to get something tasty, so whenever there was something good to eat, you'd always invite the people closest to you to come eat and drink together. The guests didn't stand on ceremony either. Just coming empty-handed was fine. After all, everyone shared the bond of weathering ice and snow together and huddling together for warmth. Old Fan and old Badu were first-generation pioneers. Tang Dashan was second generation, and Tang He belonged to the third generation. Xiao Zheng's name was Zheng Jingwei. He was village chief old Fan's son-in-law, so Tang He was supposed to call him second uncle-in-law, but since they weren't far apart in age, they were usually informal with each other. Back in the day, he had served in the army north of the grasslands, and down south, he had even fought the monkeys in real combat for 2 months. He was a tough man who had seen blood and seen the world, and later he was village chief for many years. He and Tang He's family were extremely close, and that relationship lasted right up until Tang He died suddenly. Fewer people made for easier eating, more people made for quicker work, and soon the dumplings were all wrapped. In the Northeast, even a table laid out with 18 dishes couldn't compare to homemade dumplings. Dumplings stuffed with cracklings and pickled cabbage, with the cracklings rendered from the big brown bear Tang he had hunted himself. Now that was seriously impressive. With dumplings and liquor, the more you drank, the more there seemed to be. The cracklings were sprinkled with salt. One bite, and your mouth filled with oil. Scallions and pickled cabbage hearts dipped in soybean paste were refreshing and perfect with drinks. As the drinking grew lively, Xiao Zheng insisted on stewing the 4 bear paws Tang he had brought back too, to have a taste of bear paw, but a few slaps from his wife knocked some sense into him. When the last cup of liquor was drained, old Fan, his face flushed red, said, "Little Tang, when spring comes our production team is going to break up, and the cattle, horses, and fields will all be assigned by drawing lots." Tang Dajuan smiled and poured old Fan another half cup of liquor, his face just as red, and said, "Uncle Fan, let's not say anything more. Whatever we draw is what we get. Then we'll just team up and work. No matter what, nobody's going to starve to death. That's pretty good already. With you saying that, my heart feels settled. In this damn world, wasn't the production team doing just fine? Why the hell did they have to break it up and contract everything out?" Zheng Jingwei rolled his eyes and said, "Dad, that's your old way of thinking, isn't it? In a place like ours that doesn't even produce the 5 grains, they still insist on planting wheat, and an acre doesn't even yield 200 gene. Good thing we've got a lot of land. Because if we had any less, we'd starve to death after handing over the public grain. Better to divide up the land early, plant whatever you want. It'll definitely be better than now." Old Fan thumped his cup down. He cursed angrily, "You ungrateful bastard. If it weren't for the great leadership, You'd have fucking starved to death long ago. How many years has it been? And you already want to break up and call it quits. The father-in-law and son-in-law nearly came to blows at the dinner table. The whole table was stopping and persuading them, and old Bada's hat was even knocked off, leaving his shiny bald head exposed as he grabbed this one and held back that one. Meanwhile, the old lady and her daughter Fan Xiujuan looked completely calm and even ate a few more dumplings. Du Liqiu was even less polite, pulling out lunchboxes and filling 2 large ones to the brim, then saying with full justification that the old dumbass only knew how to boil food in water, and it tasted awful. Old Bada got so mad he kicked Tang He several times. His son calling him an old dumbass was all something Tang He had taught him. And by seniority, based on the elders' relationship, Tang He was supposed to call Du Liqiu little uncle. After all the commotion, they finally saw everyone off. Tang He went to sleep in the small room, while his little sister and little brother slept on the warm Kong head. And Tang He slept at the end of the Kong. The big black cat burrowed into the quilt and curled up between his legs, resting its chin on his leg. He had been sleeping just fine, but with Tang He full from food and drink. His mind was filled with the girl in the flowered jacket. A 19-year-old young man was restless at all times, and then the black cat suddenly sprang up to catch a mouse. One bite down, and it nearly crippled Tang He. Tang He kicked the black cat out with one foot, and his little brother quickly dragged it into his own quilt, snickering foolishly, as if he'd picked up some huge bargain. When Tang He woke up naturally, it was already well into the morning. Throwing on some clothes, he went outside and patted the big pile of snow in the yard with satisfaction. Frozen inside were 4 bear paws, along with the leftover bear meat. Before the snow melted, the family wouldn't be short on rich food. Carrying the bear gallbladder and dragging over 100 gene of bear meat on a sled, Tang He went straight to Lin Xiuer's house. When Lin Xiuer, wearing her flowered jacket, saw Tang He, she immediately thought of how he had held her and kissed her the day before yesterday. Her pretty face instantly flushed red with oomph, and she hurriedly hid in the inner room. Lin's mother, Zhang Xiuchuan, came forward to greet him. The sturdy little brother-in-law had just shown his face when Tang He grabbed the useless little brother-in-law, turned him upside down, and planted him headfirst back into the snowbank. Then stuffed the bear gallbladder, round like a little rubber ball, into Zhang Xiuchuan's hands. "Auntie, take this bear gallbladder to that old medicine man to make a remedy and treat my wife's size. Please give me a few more days, so I can scrape together some money and have my uncle go to Bingxing for a look. It can't go on like this, with him being so muddle-headed all the time." Looking at the bear gallbladder in her hand, round like a ball and as big as 2 fists, Zhang Xiuchuan was instantly dumbfounded. With its golden color, this thing would sell in town for at least 200 or 300 yuan, right? And that huge pile of plump bear meat too. How long would it take to finish eating all that? "Auntie, your family still has a wild boar stomach, right?" "Ah, yes, we do, it's frozen. You want to eat it? I'll cook it for you." Zhang Xiuchuan was so delighted her eyes nearly disappeared as she quickly dug a pretty big wild boar stomach out of the snowbank. "Auntie, don't trouble yourself. I'm taking it to give to someone." Zhang Xiuchuan quickly fetched another cloth bag and packed it up for him. Looking again at this handsome young man, the more she looked, the more she liked him. If the family hadn't really had no other choice, who would be willing to force someone with bride price? Brother, Grandma's here. She's taking all the meat from the house away. It's piled so high on the bicycle. Even the bear paws you hid were loaded up by her. She's also asking you for the bear gallbladder." The chubby child Tang Shu came running in from outside the gate, waving his hands and shouting. When Zhang Xiuchuan heard this, a troubled look immediately appeared on her face. She let out a deep sigh, turned around, and was about to return the bear gall to Tang He. Tang He quickly grabbed her and let out a cold laugh. In his previous life, this awful grandmother was feared by everyone, hated by man and God alike, a complete old shrew. Back then, Tang Dashan had gotten into a technical secondary school. In those days, technical secondary school, the state not only didn't charge tuition but even gave stipends. But this old woman threw a tantrum and refused to let him go no matter what, insisting he stay home to work. And once he stayed, it was for a lifetime, facing the black soil with his back to the sky. Why was Tang Dashan lame in that leg? It was because of this grandmother. To curry favor with her eldest daughter-in-law, she forced her younger son to go hunting in the mountains without any proper preparation, and his leg was broken by a wild boar. With no money for treatment, he was left disabled. After that, all Tang Dashan got was a consoling remark calling him useless. As for all the other things, they were even worse. The reason was that she exhausted the family's meager savings and Tang Dajuan's future, giving gifts and pulling strings to get her eldest son a job at the town plywood factory, and the eldest daughter-in-law a job at the chopsticks factory. They both had urban household registration, lived on commodity grain, and earned wages. A mother being this snobbish and biased was really something else. But now, this awful old woman probably didn't know what it meant to cast aside personal decency and enjoy a shameless life. The sinister grin on Tang He's face frightened Zhang Xiuquan badly, and she quickly pointed at Tang He and said, "Child, Taichish, that is your grandmother." Lin Xiu'er, wearing a flowered padded jacket, her eyes red and swollen, stood at the doorway holding the bawling brat and looked at Tang He worriedly. That gentle and pretty face of hers was filled with worry. Tang He burst out laughing, ignored his future mother-in-law, and instead yanked the brat out of Lin Xiu'er's arms, cursed that he was no man, then tossed him back into the snowdrift, and brazenly wrapped an arm around Lin Xiu'er and fiercely kissed her on her little mouth. If I don't make this old woman submit completely today, who knows how much grievance Xiu'er will suffer after she follows me. As he spoke, Tang He cupped Lin Xiu'er's little face and said seriously, "Xiu'er, I promise that after you marry me, you won't suffer even the slightest grievance. The two of us will live this whole life in peace and safety, without quarrels or fights." After Tang He finished speaking, he turned and strode away. Lin Xiu'er's legs went a little weak right then. In this day and age, was there any sweeter love talk than this? The chubby boy trotted after him, shouting, "Second brother, you're freaking awesome." Lin Xiu'er held onto the doorframe, ignoring her younger brother's howling with snow all over his face and head. Her legs were so weak that she almost wished she could bear Tang He a child right now. Inside the house, a man with a large frame but a very frail body supported himself against the wall and walked out. Zhang Xiuquan said anxiously, "Old Lin, this matter, look at this matter." Lin Jiqiang waved his hand and said, "Old woman, leave it alone. Little Tang is a real man, and Xiu'er has taken a liking to him. I like him too. If not for you, I would have already been gone. It's no big fucking deal anyway. Lying down for a month or so, and I'd have been fine." As Lin Jiqiang spoke, he twisted up a dry tobacco roll, stuffed it into his mouth, lit it, and muttered, "Since this matter can be settled, then no matter when, no matter what outrageous thing little Tang does, our whole family has to stand on his side. Old woman, give that brat a beating. This brat has no sense of propriety and needs a lesson." Zhang Xiuquan immediately grabbed a broom and yanked the brat over to whip him. Sis, save me, save me." At this moment, Lin Xiu'er was immersed in the fantasy of getting pregnant just by sitting there, so how could she care about her little brother's cries for help? She paid no attention at all. Tang He dashed home in a flash. A sharp-eyed old lady with a mean look on her face was standing in front of an old-style bicycle, with piles of bear meat stacked high on the front beam and rear rack, and 4 bear paws tied with rope and hanging from the handlebars. It was something that this old lady could even push it. The moment she saw Tang He return, she immediately stepped forward, held out her hand, and shouted, "You little pest. You were willing to give away that precious bear gallbladder to some worthless loser? Hand it over, give it to me." Tang He rolled his eyes and ignored her, then kicked the bicycle over with one foot. "Weren't you living with my eldest uncle? Didn't you say that if you ever set foot in my house in this life, you'd be a son of a bitch? You're my grandma, so I won't argue with you over that nasty talk. Since you've come to my house, I'll treat you with good food and drink, but if you want to carry things away, no way." "Ah yeah, you little bastard, you've grown bold, have you?" I really have grown capable, setting up my own household, shutting the door, and living my own life. I can support the whole family, old and young, and provide for them. That's what capability is. Old lady, don't worry, during my lifetime, even if my family has to beg, we still won't beg at your doorstep." The more Tang He spoke, the angrier he got. If this old lady hadn't caused so much trouble, this family would never have been ruined to such a state. Why had his mother become so frail? And why did his father, a man once tough as iron, have to drag around a crippled body? Not all parents deserve to be parents. Tang He couldn't help but say viciously, "Old lady, remember this well. The evil you do today is the fruit you'll bear tomorrow. You will die in a pile of your own piss and shit." What Tang He said was simply a statement of fact. In his previous life, after the old lady suffered a stroke, no one took care of her. She was thrown into a shabby little room and really did die in a pile of her own piss and shit. But she was not worth pitying. The old lady flew into a rage on the spot, but seeing Tang He's tall build, she didn't dare lay a hand on him. So she resorted to the thing rural old women were best at, throwing a tantrum. The old lady rushed straight to the doorway, plopped down on the ground, slapped her thighs, yanked at her hair, and cried and shouted. Among the things she cursed, wishing this whole family would drop dead of plague in an instant was the nicest of it. Morality, for shameless people, is lighter than a feather. But the more self-respecting a person is, the more they suffer for it, whether they're right or wrong. Tang He's family clearly cared about their dignity. Tang Dashan and Li Shuhua's faces turned green at once. Even the two children, Tang Li and Tang Shu, were so angry their little faces turned red, yet they were at a loss. After all, they couldn't exactly beat up an old lady in the street. But Tang He burst out laughing. At last, he could learn something from the young people of his previous life, what it meant to cast aside manners and enjoy a shameless life. Tang He ran to the side room, took out the family's only brass basin, then grabbed a rolling pin and started banging loudly on the basin. In an instant, the shouting and the clanging echoed through the whole village. In the freezing cold, staying cooped up at home was truly boring. Now that there was excitement, the several hundred people in the whole village swarmed over as if riding rockets. And the old lady slapped her thighs and cursed even more vigorously. Tang He, however, kept banging on the brass basin, then tapped out a few quick beats, followed by a pause, instantly drawing everyone's attention. Bang bang, and then bang bang. Neighbors near and far, come take a look, spread the word and tell the tale. Listen while I give you the full account of the Tang family's little mess. Tang He banged the brass basin 3 more times. It instantly lit up everyone's eyes. Oh wow, this kid just hunted a bear, and now he started doing rhythmic clapper talk again. If he sang an Arinzuan too, wouldn't that be even livelier? Clang clang, clang clang. The old lady of the old Tang family has a sore growing in her heart. The eldest son is blessed like a cowherd who married the 7 fairies, while the poor younger son is like he has no father or mother. He got into a good school, but wasn't allowed to go, all because they were busy marrying a wife for the eldest son. And that wasn't even the worst of it. What came later was the real disaster. Tang He beat the copper basin and hopped around like a shaman, chanting as he danced. Tang Dashan and the others were too embarrassed to watch, but Tang, he didn't care. Didn't young people in later times all say it? If I'm not embarrassed, then the embarrassed ones are everyone else. The old lady was so furious she got up to claw at him, but how could she match a young man's quick legs? In one breath, Tang He sang out all the grievances his parents and their younger generation had suffered, and the villagers all around kept cheering. These days, never mind artistic merit. If it's catchy, easy to sing, and lively, that's the greatest entertainment there is. It probably wouldn't be long before the whole town had heard it. With such a widely sung tune on their side, who would dare say this family was unfilial? Tang He made a tiger-like leap and dodged the old lady's lunge. And as a result, the old lady pitched head first onto the ground, slapping the snow and shouting that her grandson was beating his grandmother. What monstrous unfiliality. Tang He shot his little sister and little brother a fierce glare. The two children, who had been looking at him with worshipful faces, changed. Tang Li still looked baffled, but Tang Shu, the chubby little boy, instantly caught on and threw his arms around Tang Dashan's leg and started crying. Tang Li also understood, hugged Li Shuhua, and began to wail loudly. Listening to her brother's doggerel, she had to struggle hard not to laugh out loud. Tang He paid no attention at all to the old lady sitting on the ground howling. As if I'd keep following your rhythm. If I'm going to chop, of course I'll chop at your most cherished one. Tang He pointed outside the crowd, and everyone's eyes swished in unison toward it. The faces of a middle-aged man and woman changed instantly. Tang He burst out laughing and banged the copper basin. Clang clang, clang clang, my dear uncle and auntie, think it over carefully. Should I go sing this at the gate of your work unit? In the era of the planned economy and state-owned enterprises, everyone lived in a small circle and still cared somewhat about saving face. And now that they'd run into someone like Tang He, who was shameless enough to throw everything away, no matter how much you splashed at him, today you still had to bow your head and soften. Tang Dalan and his wife went green in the face, turned around with their bicycles, and left. The old lady jumped up and tried to claw at Tang He again. But Tang He smashed the dented copper basin hard onto the ground and roared viciously. Grandma, do you believe that if I go do this act again at the gate of the Forestry Bureau, your precious eldest grandson's job will be gone on the spot? The old lady was immediately cowed. Her eldest grandson was the apple of her eye. And after tremendous effort and spending quite a bit of money, they'd finally found him a job tending the boiler. If the job really fell through, then his marriage prospect would fall through too. Don't laugh at tending the boiler. That was still a formal forestry employee position, not something ordinary people could get. In those days, there was still the job inheritance system. The old lady resentfully pushed her bicycle, and just as she was about to leave, Tang he delivered one last loud blow. Grandma, if you can't get by at my uncle's house anymore, come live at my house. I'll support you in your old age. You plague-ridden little bastard. Even if I starve to death out there, I still won't need you to support me in old age. Haha, that's a promise now. Once shit is squeezed out, you don't sit back down on it. With venomous hatred so deep, she wished she could wipe out his whole family. The old lady pedaled her bicycle after her eldest son. Before she had even left the village, they could hear her loudly shouting about how she was going to kill off her younger son's whole family. That awful family was gone, but the villagers' mood for watching the spectacle hadn't faded, especially since most of them were old women. They weren't afraid of the cold, standing there with their hands tucked in their sleeves, sniffing back snot, chirping away as they gossiped. What Tang he did was satisfying, but in the end it still went against traditional morality, so people were bound to gossip about it later. Especially when Tang he's marriage was mentioned, some even said with schadenfreude that this bare gallbladder was probably going to be given away for nothing. Zhang Xiuquan had been showing off so much that it made people uncomfortable just looking at her. Tang Dashan and Li Shuhua's expressions also turned ugly. Rumors were like knives, killing without spilling blood. The Lin family was probably not going to be able to swallow this humiliation. Just then, the crowd behind them suddenly fell silent, and then a path opened up. Lin Xiu'er was supporting Lin Montsong, with a gloomy-faced Zhang Xiuquan beside them, and behind them followed the brat who kept rubbing his butt as he walked. The family of four passed through the crowd like that, and came to stand in front of the Tang family. Lin Montsong reached out and tightly grasped both of Tang Dashan's hands. One had a frail body, the other a lame leg, but when those two pairs of hands clasped together, they felt as heavy as mountains. Lin Montsong said in a deep voice, "Brother Tang, our family has waited so long and still didn't see you come over to discuss the marriage. I couldn't wait any longer, so I came myself. Don't look down on our family." Tang Dashan burst into hearty laughter with an ease he had never felt before. As long as the kids are willing, what more is there to say? Come on, let's go inside and drink. Let's set a date before Jingzha. The two families went inside in high spirits. Some people who were fairly close and on good terms with them, such as the Old Fan family, Old Badu, Lu Laolu, Wang Lauer, and others, also followed them in. The rest of the villagers excitedly talked about what had happened today, heading back in little groups to continue the gossip. It was one of the few amusements in this bitterly cold weather, and Tang he was now basically getting the treatment of a village celebrity. Amid the lively atmosphere, Tang he looked at Lin Xiu'er shrinking behind Lin Montsong. Seeing her pretty face flushed red with thumb, his heart itched unbearably. Whoever got the chance to see the girl who had once been their unattainable first love again, and was even discussing marriage with her, probably wouldn't be able to stay calm either. Hearing that they were about to set the date, Tang he immediately stepped forward and said, "Dad, Mom, Uncle, Annie, how about picking an auspicious day in the first lunar month next year instead? One more year won't make much difference. Give me a year to straighten things out at home and earn some more money. Then build another house behind ours. While you're all still in good health, the two of us can enjoy a few years alone." As Tang he spoke, right in front of everyone, he directly pulled Lin Xiu'er out. Lin Xiu'er let out a flustered cry and turned to look at her parents. But Tang he half embraced her and dragged her out with great force. It was hardly any different from acting like a hooligan. In those days, hooliganism was still an actual crime. But Zhang Xiuquan was smiling so hard her eyes were nearly shut. If they didn't live together, there'd be no mother-in-law and daughter-in-law conflicts. For her daughter, that would be a good life. Li Shuhua's expression, however, didn't look too good. Before she had even had the chance to assert herself as the mother-in-law, her son had already dealt her a blow right to the head. The daughter-in-law hadn't even entered the family yet, and he was already kicking his parents aside. Tang he pulled Lin Xiu'er into the storage room. Shyly, she gave his chest a little tap and said, "Tishish, this isn't even marriage yet, and you're already thinking about splitting the family up. What will people think of me? Oh, come on. Living in front and back courtyards. How can that even count as splitting the family? My parents are still spry and capable, so they don't need us hovering around in front of them. The time when they can no longer move around is when it's our turn to show filial piety." But Lin Xiu'er could feel that this man was thinking of her, and her heart felt sweet. By the time she came to her senses, a paw had already slipped into her floral padded jacket, feeling along her slender, tender waist. Lin Xiu'er's pretty face flushed red with foam, and when she tried to struggle, Tang he held her even tighter. "What are you hiding for? I only touched your waist. I didn't touch anywhere else. Tang He's hand gently stroked back and forth over her soft, supple waist and lower belly, and it felt just like a dream. He had missed far too much in his previous life. Why you? Stop touching me. It feels awful. What feels awful? Let your big brother give you a kiss. There was plenty of bear meat at home, stewed in a huge pot. Then add potatoes, dried green beans, dried eggplant, napa cabbage, and vermicelli noodles. One big glossy, oily pot. This was the most famous winter stew in northeast China. Along with the indispensable vegetables for dipping in sauce, it was absolutely presentable, second only in spread to yesterday's dumplings. Tang He originally didn't like eating these dried vegetables, because vegetables dried without enough oil turned out scratchy on the throat when stewed. But now there was plenty of oil, and the dried vegetables had soaked up all the broth and fat, making them incredibly fragrant. But suddenly taking in so much rich food had another consequence too. It could more or less cause diarrhea. Tang Shu, that chubby kid, had it the worst. Who told him to be so greedy? He was clearly stuffed up to his throat, but after running around outside for a lap, bouncing about, he still managed to cram in a few more bites. As a result, he had the runs all night and nearly froze his butt off. Even the big black cat at home kept him company, pooping for more than half the night. Diarrhea or not, the people in all the households had all been nourished by the rich food, their little faces glowing with health. Only Tang He wasn't having such an easy time. His mother shot him a glare every time she looked at him. So fierce it seemed her eyeballs were about to fly out. Tang He savored the wonderful feeling of kissing Lin Xiaoer's snow-white belly earlier and pretended not to notice. In this era, people still upheld the age-old belief in harsh discipline. That a filial son is forged under the rod was the supreme truth. Especially when it came to one's mother, there was no reasoning with her. Endure it, and it would pass. Around nearly noon, Tang He loaded 50 gene of bear meat, for bear paws, and a rather large wild boar stomach onto a sled and headed out amid Li Shuhua's curses of spendthrift. Walking all the way toward the town 5 kilometers away, Tang He was going to deliver gifts. Whether he could live well from now on depended on this trip. Timing it for the lunch hour, he arrived at one of the few apartment buildings in town. Living in an apartment was envied by everyone, because in winter they could poop indoors without freezing their butts. His middle school teacher, Dong Wanhua, lived here. More importantly, her husband was a leader in the Forestry Public Security Bureau, specifically in charge of forest fire prevention. Here it's necessary to mention the Forestry Bureau's whole administrative setup. All kinds of functional departments had their own teams. The Forestry Bureau had money, while the local government was practically invisible, with almost no presence at all. Tang He carried the things upstairs and knocked on the door. It opened, and Dong Wanhua, a woman in her 40s, ordinary-looking but with well-proportioned features and a touch of a teacher's authority, gave a surprised cry. Tang He, what brings you here? With a cheerful smile, Tang He handed the boar stomach to Dong Wanhua and said, Teacher, I know your stomach isn't good, so I got a wild boar stomach. Dried and steeped in water, it can help nourish the stomach. A few days ago, I hunted a black bear. It'd be a waste for us to eat these bear paws ourselves. My uncle should be able to make use of them. Where's Junior's sister? The child was sent to her grandma's place. Goodness, you kid, you went into the mountains to hunt a bear. Were you hurt? As Dong Wanhua spoke, she reached out to pull at Tang He's clothes. Tang He's clothes were tugged open, briefly revealing the wound along his ribs. Then he quickly pulled them back down. But inwardly he let out a sigh, feeling that he was basically coming to their door to bully them. Teacher Dong was a strict teacher who hardly ever smiled, and was also extremely responsible. Teachers and parents in those days were almost no different. Even in middle school, if a child deserved a beating, they got one. If the parents didn't know, that was one thing. If they found out the child had been beaten by a teacher, without even asking the reason, they would beat the child again. But there was another thing too. No family's child could just be dragged over and beaten for nothing. Especially in a small place like this, if something happened to a student, the teacher would really step in. Now that he was asking a favor, coming to see Teacher Dong, he felt perfectly justified in doing so for the sake of all the times she had whipped him bloody with the pointer back then. Old who, stop ironing that ragged shirt of yours all day and get out here. My student still remembers you. When Dong Wanhua saw the injury on Tang He, her eyes instantly turned sharp, and she called the man out of the bedroom. A middle-aged man in a white police uniform, with a round face and a fleshy, fierce-looking expression that made him seem like no good person at first glance, came out of the bedroom tugging at his collar. He nodded to Tang He, and when he saw the 4 bear paws Tang He had placed on the floor, he was somewhat moved too. You came, so you came. Why bring things? Have you eaten? Tang He grinned. Not yet. If I come to my teacher's house and don't mooch a meal, I'd be too embarrassed to go back. You brat, get over there and eat. As Old Hu spoke, he gave Tang He a kick. Tang He wasn't polite either. At 19, it was exactly the age to eat and drink heartily. He drank a bottle of Beidakang with Old Hu and polished off all the food. Dong Wanhua made some tea, glared at Tang He, and went back to her room to prepare lessons. Old Hu crossed his legs and said, "You little punk, bringing such a heavy gift, you definitely aren't holding in any good intentions. So hurry up and say it. I have to go to work soon. Once I walk out this door, nothing you say will do any good." Tang He, looking utterly shameless, said with a grin, "Uncle, look, I nearly lost my life hunting this bear." As he spoke, Tang He tugged at his clothes and showed the wound. Old Hu frowned. Everyone knows bear gall and bear paws are valuable, but getting this stuff means risking your life. Haven't there already been plenty of people mauled by black bears year after year? You must have eaten your fill and had nothing better to do than provoke that thing. How about this? I'll speak to a friend and get you into the forest ranger team first. The pay isn't much, but it'll be enough. Tang He quickly shook his head. Uncle, spots in the forest ranger team are precious, so I'd better not make things difficult for you. Then what do you want to do? Sit in an office? Old Hu said irritably. Tang He said with a grin. Uncle, get me a gun, will you? Old Hu immediately relaxed. That was far easier than arranging a job. But he didn't say anything. Because in those days getting a gun was easy, not to mention professional institutions like the Forestry Public Security Bureau and the Forest Police Unit. Even the Forestry Bureau's timber yards and the militia at forest farms had plenty of Type 56 carbines. But the problem was, getting a gun was easy. If something really happened and someone got shot dead, that meant taking responsibility. Just as Old Hu was hesitating, Dong Wanhua came out from the inner room and said to Old Hu, "Old Hu, get him one. This child has been steady since he was little. He won't cause trouble with a gun." Tang He immediately seized the chance and said in a deep voice, "Teacher, uncle, I guarantee you, if I ever dare point a gun at a person, may I never make it out of the old forest. You child, all you do is talk nonsense." Dong Wanhua said angrily, then glared at Old Hu again. Old Hu let out a sigh, picked up 2 bear paws, shot Tang He a glare, and said, "Let's go." "All right." Tang He quickly trotted after him. When they arrived at the Forestry Public Security Bureau, Old Hu told Tang He to wait downstairs. Just like that, reeking of alcohol and carrying the bear paws, he greeted people all the way upstairs and headed straight for the director's office. He came down again before long. Only the bear paws were gone. Old Hu led Tang He to the warehouse in the back, greeted the warehouse keeper, and tossed over 2 packs of Hongshanka cigarettes. The man took the cigarettes, cheerfully opened the warehouse and turned on the lights, then left them to it. The moment Tang He walked in, his eyes lit up. He ignored all the supplies outside, his attention completely drawn to the rows of guns at the very back. There were all kinds of guns, but what attracted Tang He the most was the iconic Type 81 rifle, newly put into production and still scarce even at the front line. Tang He immediately grabbed one and said pitifully, "Uncle, this one, just this one." "Screw you." Old Hu snatched the gun away and put it back. "This gun was transferred here less than a week ago, and it has testing duties. If I gave it to you, I'd lose my head." Tang He picked up a classic Type 56 semi-auto and hugged it tightly. "Uncle, this one will do too. In your dreams. Change your ethnicity, and I might be able to go through the procedure and get you one. If you want to borrow one for 3 to 5 days, that's fine." Tang He sighed. What he wanted was a gun of his own, not a borrowed one. He really couldn't understand how the ordinary folks next door managed to get Type 56 semi-autos so easily. Pick through that pile of junk. Maybe it'll be destroyed one day anyway. It really was a pile of junk, Mosinagants, Arisakas, Hanyang 88s, even old sleeve guns. Like a groundhog, Tang He rummaged through the junk pile, and only after half an hour did he pick out 2 rifles. One was a Soviet-made Mosin-Nagant, and the other an Arisaka, both in very good condition. The bolts were fine, the rifling in the barrels was good, and the springs and everything else worked smoothly. Old Hu said with a smile, "You'd better not pick the Arisaka. 6.5 ammo is hard to find." "Sigh, that's true." Old Hu gave Tang He 2 more boxes of ammunition. Just as they were heading out, Tang He stopped again. "Uncle, 1 makes no difference and 2 makes no difference either, so give me this one too." Old Hu's face darkened. This kid was really pushing his luck, with no sense of limits at all. "I brought you a few bear paws, so what? You want me to get you a goddamn machine gun too?" Old Hu's face was gloomy as he turned to scold Tang He. But when he saw that Tang He was pointing at an eye-shaped brand air rifle that had been confiscated, he immediately relaxed and simply waved his hand. Take it. But I'm warning you, don't point a gun at people. There was a little punk before who used this air rifle to injure someone and got sentenced to 5 years of re-education through labor. If you don't want to end up locked inside, then be careful. Tang He quickly took the air rifle, wrapped both guns in a torn burlap sack, and said with a serious expression, Uncle, I keep my word. I will never point a gun at anyone. Seeing how solemn Tang He looked, Old Hu felt somewhat reassured. And then looking again at this young man whose face still held some youthful immaturity, yet seemed especially mature and steady. The more he looked, the more he liked him. Fine, as long as you don't point a gun at people. If anything happens, mention my name. If you get anything good, remember to bring me some. Old Hu said without the least politeness. Tang He was instantly overjoyed. Don't be fooled by the fact that Old Hu was only a section chief at the Forestry Public Security Bureau. He was a real local boss. His authority in hand wasn't great, but his jurisdiction, no exaggeration, was no smaller than a smaller province. Don't worry, Uncle, I guarantee I won't cause you any trouble. Tang He gave his assurance again, then was waved off by Old Hu. As soon as Tang He left, Old Hu immediately looked spirited and full of ambition, with a pair of bear paws sent out. The originally somewhat difficult promotion from deputy to full position was already a done deal. Carrying the gun on his back and dragging the sled, Tang He headed back, and on the way he ran into the production team's returning horse cart, greeted them, hooked the sled on, and climbed onto the cart. The driver, Lu Laolu, glanced at the burlap sack bundle on Tang He's back and could not help frowning. Kid, are you planning to make a living patrolling the mountains and hunting? Yep, I even got the gun back. Tang He patted the sack, brimming with high spirits. Lu Laolu wanted to say something but stopped himself, and finally let out a deep sigh. Some things, no matter how close the two families are, just can't be said outright. Crack. With a crisp snap of the whip, the reddish-brown horse trotted along with light steps all the way toward the village. The first thing Tang He did when he got home was dig out a jar of bear grease. Then he began taking apart the gun, wiping it down, removing the rust, and coating it with bear grease for maintenance. Tang Dashan sat on the bench by the window, smoking his pipe tobacco. Squinting as he watched Tang He busily and happily at work, his face shifting between dark and light. Tang Shu held a rag, huffing and puffing as he helped wipe the bullets, smearing on bear grease, sniffling with a fawning smile, only hoping his second brother would let him fire a couple of shots for fun. While helping Tang He wipe the stock, Tang Li said with a grin, Bro, Mom will be back soon from visiting around. Just get ready for a beating. Tang He thought for a moment and said, Little sis, hide the weaving shuttle. That thing hurts too much when it hits people. Tang Shu, like a little lackey, hurried right over and hid the weaving shuttle in the bedding pile, then said ingratiatingly, Second brother, if Mom tries to hit you, I'll hold her back for you. Oh, give me a break. She'd flatten you in no time. As Tang He spoke, he deftly reassembled the gun, worked the bolt, and pulled the trigger at the wall. Click. It was a dry fire, crisp, loud, and perfectly smooth. Looking at the Mosin Nagant rifle polished to a shine, Tang Dashan could not help exclaiming, Fine gun. What fine gun? The door opened, and a swirl of fog and cold air came and wrapped around the figure of their mother, Li Shuhua. Tang Li gave her second brother a meaningful smile, then ran behind Tang Dashan and whispered, Dad, are you going to hold her back later or not? No way. When your mom gets mad, she's scarier than a tiger. Li Shuhua took off her hat and gloves and tossed them onto the Kong, then saw the gun in Tang He's hands, and also the air gun on the Kong, and her face immediately darkened. She reached out to snatch the one in Tang He's hands. Tang He hugged the gun and threw himself onto the Kong. Mom, listen to me. Listen to your, but give me the gun. I'm not giving it to you. If I do, you'll definitely stuff it into the stove and burn it as firewood. So you know that, huh? Give it to me, give it to me. Not giving it, not giving it. Tang He clutched the two guns and protected them with all his might, even more fiercely than if he were protecting a wife. Li Shuhua, furious, turned around to look for the weaving shuttle, but couldn't find it. Just then, a broom head suddenly appeared at hand, and she grabbed it at once. Seeing his little sister hand over the broom head, Tang He shouted, Tang Li, just you wait. After this, don't even think about. The broom head came down on Tang He with a flurry of smacks. Tang He kept screaming miserably while protecting the guns. Seeing their mother raging like a tigress, Tang Shu was so frightened that he hid behind Tang Dashan. He had completely forgotten what he'd just said about helping his second brother hold her back. The broom head had been beaten to pieces. Li Shuhua threw away the broken broom, turned, and went into the side room, then came back carrying a firewood stick as thick as an arm. The firewood in the Daxing area was different from firewood in other places. It was generally straight pine, willow, or poplar, basically logs sent straight down from the mountain, cut into half-meter lengths, and then split into small pieces for burning. Put anywhere else, it would all be top-grade timber. Tang, he shouted. Mom, are you trying to beat me to death? Grinding her teeth, Li Shuhua said, better to beat you to death than have you die in the mountains. Don't you know how your dad's leg got crippled? Old Tang, what are you looking at? You're strong, you do the hitting. Holding the arm-thick firewood stick, Old Tang gave a bitter smile. Second son, think it through. Earthen jars are bound to break by the well, and generals can hardly avoid dying before the battle line. How can it make sense that only you hunters are allowed to hunt, and not allowed to be bitten to death by the prey? Of 10 hunters, half die and half are injured. I've never seen one who stayed whole and lived to old age. Tang, he jutted out his neck and stubbornly shouted, in this life of mine, I just want to live a more exciting life. If one day I'm crushed to death by a bear or chewed to death, that's my fate. Old Tang let out a sigh and looked helplessly at Li Shuhua. The boy's grown up, you can't beat him anymore. So angry that she sat on the floor and sobbed. Li Shuhua cried as she cursed Tang He, from how disobedient he'd been since childhood to how he'd forget his mother once he got a wife. And then she cried viciously and said that sooner or later she'd burn his gun. Tang He's head throbbed painfully. It would have been better if she'd just kept beating him. Hugging his gun, Tang He jumped down from the Kong and carried his mother, who kept kicking and struggling, onto it, and said helplessly, Mom, you're acting a lot like my grandma did back when she held my dad back. The moment Tang He said that, Li Shuhua exploded, jumped up, and started hitting him again, beating him while cursing. How am I like that old woman? If I watch you go into the mountains to die, then I'm not like her. Tang He didn't say a word. He just took the beating. But that line did work pretty well. Once Li Shuhua got tired from hitting him, she lay straight down on the Kong and refused to cook. Let you men starve to death. After Tang Dashin and Tang, he cooked a few meals. Li Shuhua stopped making a fuss too. When men cook, they use far too much oil and have no idea how to run a household. Taking advantage of a light snowfall, and while his mother was out visiting neighbors, Tang He quietly took down the hidden Mosin, Nagant from the loft, brought 20 rounds of ammunition, slipped out of the house, found Du Lichio, and quietly headed into the mountains. Who knew what kind of good stuff heaven might reward him with on this trip? Tang He had the gun in his hands. Du Lichio carried a big wicker pack basket with supplies for the two of them inside, and they crossed the frozen river, plunging straight into the old forest. On the snow, all kinds of tracks crisscrossed, chickens, rabbits, civets, and they even saw plum blossom-shaped lynx prints. But in the deep old-growth forest at winter's end, everything was deathly quiet. Only now and then did a few strange bird calls sound, making people feel uneasy, as if they had stepped into another silent world. In the deep old forest, there were many kinds of game, a great many. The premise was that you had to be able to find them. Four-legged creatures were far more agile than two-legged ones, and much better at hiding too. Only the most experienced hunters could spot them with a pair of sharp eyes. Tang He was only half-baked at it, and Du Lichio was just muscle. The two of them wandered around the old forest for 2 days. Aside from seeing a few pheasants, they didn't even find a single snow hare. The Mosin, Nagant in their hands was a genuine rifle. Using it to shoot pheasants is too wasteful. One shot, and you'd be lucky if even half the bird was left. That air rifle would be more like it. It wasn't that they came away empty-handed, though. They picked several bagfuls of chokecherries. The chokecherries that had hung on the tree all winter had naturally dried in the wind. The pits were big and the flesh was thick, sweet with a hint of astringency, and tasted very good. The two of them ate until their mouths were stained pitch black, and their tongues were coated with a thick layer of raw, astringent fruit pulp. Eat too much of this stuff, and it causes constipation. The two of them probably wouldn't be able to take a crap today. Du Lichio brushed aside the loose snow, cupped up the ice crystals beneath it, and held them in his mouth. After they melted, he rinsed his mouth and spat it out, then shook the empty wicker basket and said, Tanger, we can't just keep wandering around like this. It'd be great if we had a hunting dog. If you can even get a gun, then go ask the forest police to get a wolf dog too. How impressive would it be to lead it into the mountains? Tang He could only answer with a bitter smile. A wolf dog is a wolf dog, and a hunting dog is a hunting dog. They're not the same kind of dog at all. Whether it's fishing or hunting, both require professional skills. In the greater Xin'an range, more than 99% of the people were pioneer immigrants who came after the 1950s. There wasn't even a single Japanese pillbox. The people who migrated there had a clear goal to develop the greater Xin'an range and build up the forestry bureau, so there wasn't much professional fishing or hunting. Those who did dabble in it did so as a hobby, taking a shot whether or not there was anything to hit. Usually they farmed, and in winter they went up into the mountains to check trap sets. They didn't have the spare energy to keep and train hunting dogs. The two of them, empty-handed, had nearly reached the big river behind the village when they faintly heard a dog's miserable yelp, along with people's shouts. Tang He and Du Liqiu exchanged a glance, then hurriedly ran toward the sound. After climbing a small slope, they saw in the snow below that a big yellow dog had been tossed into the air by a 300-plus Gene Palanzi boar, its legs flailing as it spun 7 or 8 times in midair before crashing to the ground. Before the big yellow dog could even get back up, the wild boar snorted out mist, the bristles on its neck standing on end, and charged up, tearing and ripping with its 2 huge Kalanzi, describing oversized balls, ripping that big yellow dog open so badly that its guts spilled out. The cotton coats of the 2 young men were unbuttoned, and one dog's fur hat had been flung off as well. One of them dropped to one knee, raised a small caliber rifle, and with a bang fired a shot that hit the wild boar in the rump. Small caliber was only the shorthand. Its full name was Small Caliber Sporting Rifle. The bullets were 5.56, and as a training gun that had once been popular across the country in earlier years, its power was pitifully weak. After that shot, the bullet lodged in the pig's hide, and the wild boar was completely unfazed. It turned around and charged straight at the two of them. One man grabbed an axe and swung it down at the boar's head, but the blow missed completely, and he was sent flying by the boar instead. The other man had no time to chamber another round, gave a strange yell, threw away the gun, and dove behind a big willow tree. The 2 men wanted to climb the tree, but the trees in the forest had smooth trunks without a single horizontal branch, so they could only dodge around the tree. Having killed a dog and tasted blood, the Palanzi grew ferociously savage, single-mindedly chasing the 2 men and trying to tear into them. Tang He excitedly shouldered the Mosin Nagant, worked the bolt to chamber around, and once some distance had opened up between the men and the boar, aimed at the big wild boar and fired with a bang. He was too excited. Though they were only a little over 30 meters apart, he still missed this shot. But that gunshot startled the single-minded big wild boar back to its senses. No longer caring about chasing down the 2 men, it turned and ran. As it ran in a straight line, it instead gave Tang He a perfect chance to aim calmly. Bang! Another shot, and the bullet hit the wild boar right in the neck. The 7.62mm rifle round burst into a spray of blood at the wild boar's neck, blowing a fist-sized hole through it and shattering most of its neck bones. The boar plunged headfirst into the snow and stopped moving. Du Liqiu jumped up, running as he pulled out his knife and shouted, "A gun really is the way to go. What a rush, a real rush." Even in winter, game had to be gutted and the internal organs removed immediately. Otherwise, the stuff inside the guts would ferment and taint the meat, making it impossible to eat. Du Liqiu had just run up to the boar when someone kicked him and sent him sprawling onto the ground. "This is the wild boar we killed." When Tang He got closer, he recognized them, Wang Laoqi and Li Zixin from the village. Tang He's family was on very good terms with Wang Laoer's family, with Wang Laoxi and Wang Lao's families. The relationship was only SOSO. Wang Laoqi was young, just in his early 20s. Li Zixin was an 18-year-old hot-headed brat. He and Wang Laoqi were birds of a feather, always sneaking around stealing chickens and dogs, no good at all. Usually, bullying other people was one thing, but now Li Zixin had actually kicked Du Liqiu flat onto his backside. Du Liqiu was famously simple-minded, even more stubborn than the boar, and when something happened, he really threw himself into it. Du Liqiu scrambled up and slammed headfirst into Li Zixin's chest, wrapped his arms around his waist, and lifted him up. Then with a bang slammed him into the snow, straddled his stomach, and started punching. Li Zixin was a strong young man of 18, but Du Liqiu was 25 or 26, right at the age when a man is at his bravest and fiercest. After just a few blows, Du Liqiu had Li Zixin's nose pouring blood. "You idiot, Qiu, are you looking to die?" The hoodlum Wang Laoqi directly raised his small-caliber rifle and aimed it at Du Liqiu's head. Clack! Tang He worked the bolt, and an empty shell casing popped out of the chamber and fell into the snow. Tang He picked up the casing and slipped it into his pocket, watching Wang Laoqi with a calm expression. Wang Laoqi looked at the small caliber rifle in his own hands. Compared with the Mosinagant in Tang He's hands, it was like a toy firecracker. Du Liqiu got up, shaking his fists as he cursed. Look at your stupid asses, saying it was your boar. If Tang hadn't fired, you two would have been boar feed by now. Li Zixin jumped up, still wanting to fight, but Wang Laoqi stopped him. Wang Laoqi said with a grin, Tang He, this time it's all thanks to you. Come on, let's drag the boar back and come drink at my place. Tang He smiled and refused. He did not even take the Ashimo Wang Laoqi offered him, instead grabbing Du Liqiu and turning to leave. Faintly, he could still hear Li Zixin cursing that they were too shameless to appreciate a favor. Du Liqiu turned back, wanting to keep fighting, but Tang He held him back. Du Liqiu looked unconvinced, so angry that he cursed Tang He for being a coward and insisted on breaking off their friendship. Tang He only smiled and kept hold of Du Liqiu, not bothering to explain. If his memory was right, the hard crackdown would begin around the middle of this year, and in 84, that is, next year, Woniu village would see a huge incident people would talk about for decades. In town, Wang Laoqi forced himself on a young girl under the pretense of dating her, and Li Zixin stood lookout for him. Not only was Wang Laoqi sentenced to death, he was tied up and paraded around for public sentencing meetings before being executed. As for Li Zixin, that lookout who hadn't even gotten a taste of anything, he still got life imprisonment. If you got too close to people like them and were brushed by the iron fist, your fate would be spending the rest of your life behind bars. Before Tang He and Du Liqiu made it home, they ran into Old Fan returning from Shandong village. Tang He called out, Master Fan, and Old Fan waved his hand and said, Qin Dabong asked me to pass along a message to you. When you've got time, go see him. Tang He answered, went home, and hid the gun in the second-floor shed. Seeing him come back empty-handed, Mom shot him a fierce glare, but her expression carried a hint of delight. In her view, young people are stubborn. They won't turn back until they hit a wall. He went off to get a gun, and what happened? Didn't he still come back empty-handed? After hitting a few more walls, he'll settle down. Don't go running around these next few days. I heard the production team is about to start distributing land and cattle and horses, and it'll be divided by head count. We need to draw lots for the gelded ones. You can help me draw? My mom has a lucky hand. Let's draw that juju-bred horse, just right for me to ride into the mountains and drag a sled. Draw your grandma's leg of a horse. I'll draw back a big bull. Let's see how the hell you ride that. Li Shuhua instantly flew into a rage and grabbed the broom head, which was new and she hadn't been willing to use, then snatched up the feather duster. Tang He had never understood what use a feather duster had in the countryside. Its only use seemed to be for beating people. When the little bamboo handle used as the grip lashed against your body, it hurt even more than a belt. Tang He immediately took off running. Better to hide first. The moment Li Shuhua saw the direction he was heading, she knew he was making for Old Lin's house, and she got even angrier. Whether that fresh young cabbage had been rooted by someone or not was unclear, but it seemed like her own plump white pig was about to be lost. Tang He walked straight into the Lin family's house without the slightest courtesy. They were practically already engaged, so there was no need for formalities. Tang He went in and took a look. Lin Xiu'er, wearing her favorite flower-patterned jacket, was sweeping the calm. Her backside was taut and round, and her legs were long too, and she was even barefoot. Those feet were really pretty. The moment Lin Xiu'er saw Tang He come in, she was so startled that she hugged the broom and shrank to the end of the Kong, then hurriedly pulled her little brother over to block in front of her. Lin Dong, sturdy and spirited, stood guard in front of his sister, baring his teeth and brandishing his claws, which only made Tang He angrier. So now you know how to act tough. What were you doing in your previous life? Tang He grabbed Lin Dong by the collar and dragged him to the doorway, then kicked him out the door. After that, grinning, he went over to the edge of the Kong and reached out to grab one of Lin Xiu'er's little feet. Lin Xiu'er was so frightened that she hurriedly tried to pull her foot back, but Tang He had too tight a grip. So how could she get it back? Lin Xiu'er pleaded. Tang He, why you can't do this? It's too much. We're about to be husband and wife anyway. What's so excessive about it? Come on, let me look at your eyes. The swelling's gone down. Those big eyes of yours are even prettier now. Tang He's hand was around Lin Xiu'er's waist, and their faces were almost pressed together. At such close range, this 18-year-old young woman's delicate pretty face looked dewy and smooth, and the corners of her big eyes were slightly moist, with lovely Egiosal under them. She looked like Sui Shaoqing, but even prettier than that celebrity. Lin Xiu'er's face instantly flushed red, because while Tang he held her foot with one hand. His other hand had already slipped nimbly into her flowered jacket, then tugged open the undershirt inside, touching her tender, slender waist. Why you're not allowed to go any further? You can only touch my back. Lin Xiao'er curled up in embarrassment, tightly pressing her legs together, both hands clutched firmly over her chest. Tang He's hand gently caressed the smooth skin of Lin Xiao'er's waist and back. At this time, not many people wore bras yet. Usually it was just a tighter little undershirt. As for women who had already borne several children, they were even less particular about such things. Going without anything underneath, which was especially obvious in the summer, though there wasn't much to look at. Lin Xiao'er was different, that smooth back of hers. From her waist, his hand slid very smoothly up to the back of her neck. Judging by this touch, being reborn in this life wasn't for nothing. Tang He leaned close to Lin Xiao'er's ears, red and faintly translucent, and murmured, "Xiao'er." Lin Xiao'er lowered her head, her chin nearly hanging to her chest. "In this life, I won't lose you again." Lin Xiao'er only responded mechanically, not hearing clearly at all what Tang He was saying. "Xiao'er." Zhang Xiuquan's voice sounded from outside the door. Lin Xiao'er was so frightened that her face turned deathly pale in an instant. She sprang up with a whoosh, jumped off the bed, and kept tugging at her flower-padded jacket, so anxious she was almost in tears. Tang He savored the feeling left on his hand and got off the bed with a grin. Only then did the door open, and Zhang Xiuquan walked in, first giving her own daughter a careful look. One look at her complexion told her nothing good had happened. Then she checked her clothes. Still okay. Auntie, you're back. Where's my uncle? Getting medicine mixed at old medicine Bangsy's place. Child, have you eaten yet? No, my mom won't cook for me. Zhang Xiuquan glared at him. If I were your mom, I wouldn't cook for you either. Sigh, child, how about? Auntie, what tasty food are we having at home? Tang He cut her off. Stir-fried, shredded potatoes. Okay, I like that. As Tang He spoke, he glanced at Lin Dong, who was hiding behind his sister and making faces at him. Let out a cold laugh, grabbed him, and amid his yelping, tossed him into the crusted snow outside. Because of what happened in his previous life, he had looked down on this little brother-in-law from the bottom of his heart. Lin Dong ate while whining and crying, but no one paid him any mind. In the Northeast, there was no tradition of slighting daughters and doting on boys. Little brats were all pretty tough, and getting a beating was an everyday thing. After Tang He finished eating, Zhang Xiuquan kept a close eye on her daughter, leaving him no chance to make a move. Since it was still early, he might as well make a trip to East Village to see Qin Dabong. In the greater Xing'an range at the end of winter and beginning of spring, there wasn't the slightest sign of spring. Gust after gust of vicious wind mixed with snow pellets struck the face like a dull knife scraping back and forth. And if there was even the smallest gap in your clothes, that nasty wind would drill right in. Tang He pulled his dogskin hat tight and broke into a trot to keep warm. Once he hunted another bear and sold it for money, he was definitely going to buy a bicycle. Shouting worked fine for communication, but having to walk whenever you went out was really damn inconvenient. The road was a good road, built with gravel for the forestry transport of timber, and every so often a big Jiefeng truck hauling logs would rumble past. The huge round logs, dozens of meters long, swayed with the movement of the truck like the tail of a giant python. A few little kids sliding on ice boards on the road hurried far out of the way when they saw a truck coming. Kids here knew from an early age that if the tip of one of those logs whipped you once, you'd die on the spot. Tang He grabbed a younger boy and took the ice board off his feet. The ice board was made from planks from the lumber yard, 1/2 inch thick and 2 inches wide, with number 8 iron wire wrapped in a ring underneath and nailed in place, then threaded with rope and tied to the feet. Sliding on smooth roads, they were fast and steady. If you were skilled, you could skate an ice board like a speed skater on a sports field. Tang He's skills were fairly average, but using it to glide along these 7 or 8 li made the trip feel easy. Once he got off the main road, the ice board couldn't be used anymore, so he untied it, carried it in his hand, and entered the village. Qin Dabang's house was right at the village entrance next to the road, and the deep barking of the mastiff served as the doorbell. Qin Dabong barked a command, and the mastiff stopped barking. It kept circling around Qin Dabong, while that ugly striped dog slyly sized Tang He up, looking like it was ready at any moment to lunge for his crotch. Tang He paid no attention to the lion-like mastiff, instead staring fixedly at the ugly striped dog. Master Qin, keep your dog under control. This dog is trying to go for my crotch. Qin Dabong gave a hush, and only then did the ugly dog wag its tail and bare its teeth, backing away into its kennel like a fawning eunuch. Only then did Tang. He let out a sigh of relief and followed Qin Dabong into the house. An old lady with a sickly look on her face got off the Kong, opened the cabinet built into it, and pulled out a rusty, barely intact malted milk box bound up with several layers of hemp rope. She carefully opened the lid and held it out in front of Tang He. "Child, have some candy, have some candy." "Oh, Grandma Qin, you rest." Tang He said as he pulled 2 boxes of Hong Shanchao cigarettes he had swiped from Old Hu out of his pocket and stuffed them into the old lady's hands. "Oh my, such good cigarettes would be wasted on me. Take them back and save them to smoke during the new year." "I don't smoke anyway, Grandma Qin. Give them a try." Tang He pushed them back again. After speaking, Tang He looked at Qin Dabong with a half smile. Qin Dabang's old face had still been wearing a doting grin. But when he saw Tang He's half-smiling expression, he immediately got angry. Grabbing his tobacco pipe, he hit him as he cursed. "What the fuck are you laughing at? It's not my fault the thing is big. Master Qin, what are you doing? I didn't even say anything. That thieving look in your eyes is no good." The old lady quickly pulled them apart, then got up to make food. Even if it wasn't mealtime yet, a guest had to be kept for a meal. The harder life was, and the more people needed to huddle together for warmth, the stronger this unwritten rule became. In these lean days, there wasn't much good to eat. Boil a few potatoes, mash them up, chop a few scallions, crush some garlic, mix it all with soybean paste, and you've got a fine dish to go with drinks. If you were willing to use lard to stir-fry some pickled cabbage with glass noodles, that was something special. When a plate of scrambled eggs with wood ear mushrooms was brought out, Tang He gave an O and stood up, respectfully taking it with both hands and setting it on the table. This was a real main dish. "Try this wood ear. Louding picked it on the mountain last year." Tang He picked up a chopstickful, just 2 slices. The blackwood ear was plump and thick. It was very easy for Tang He, a reborn man, to let his thoughts wander. This stuff existed in later generations too, but it had nothing to do with ordinary people. It wasn't a question of whether it was expensive, but that it was scarce. Giving it as a gift to a leader would be enough. For ordinary people, wood ear grown on oak logs was about the same as wild. What you could buy was all grown in fungus bags, with high yield, and actually the taste was pretty good too. Tang He drank a couple of mouthfuls of loose liquor with Qin Dabong, and sweat immediately broke out on his forehead. This flavor was spot on. "Tanger, planning to patrol the mountains?" Hom. Tang He answered with great certainty. "So, taking this opportunity, I wanted to ask Master Qin for some advice." "What's there to ask advice about? Show the mountains some respect. Be a little cowardly. Staying alive is better than anything." Tang He couldn't help saying, "Don't we still have guns?" Qin Dabong chuckled, took out an oilcloth-wrapped bundle from the Kong cabinet and unwrapped it, revealing an old bolt-action rifle in front of Tang He. "What can a gun do? Fire it into the woods at empty air? You've got to be able to find them. Even if you kill 10 black bears in a day, if you get lost in the old forest, can you make your way back out?" Tang He immediately lowered his head and accepted the lesson. Qin Dabong liked to act as a teacher, and as he drank he told Tang He all about the tricks of tracking prey, truly opening Tang He's eyes. That earlier stakeout at the den was completely down to luck, and only half luck at that. If Qin Dabangzi hadn't also had his eye on that den, he and Du Liqiu would both have frozen stiff. They drank until it was almost dark. Qin Dabong urged his old woman to go feed the dogs, then set down his cup and said, "A hunter without dogs, no matter how good, is only half-baked." Bang bang bang. From the outer room came the sound of knocking on the crock. The old woman poked her head in carrying less than half a basin of cornmeal and said, "Old man, we're out of cornmeal. If it's gone, feed them leftovers." Tang He was instantly embarrassed. He had polished off that whole basin of steamed rice. Nothing to be done. He was a 19-year-old young man with a big appetite. Damn it, then steam a few more potatoes. The old woman turned and went out. Qin Dabong sighed. "I'm old now. Can't run anymore. Can't even afford to feed the dogs anymore." Tang He laughed and said, "Don't you still have that bear hide? That can sell for quite a bit too." "I'm not fucking talking about the bear hide. I said I can't afford to feed the dogs anymore, and they're good hunting dogs at that. You're planning to patrol the mountains. Don't you want one?" Tang He was overjoyed at once. "Master Qin, you're really willing to give me that mastiff?" Qin Dabong frowned. "Mastiffs are stupid and clumsy. What do you want it for? You're not going to patrol the mountains. You're switching to keeping dogs now, huh?" "Aye," Qin Dabong said with a proud look. "As for my mastiff, even the forestry police team's wolf dogs tremble when they see it. Put it out on the grasslands, and it can guard the house and fight wolves. I take it into the mountains for protection. But when it comes to patrolling and hunting, it still has to be my hoosie. Kind of ugly, huh?" What the hell do you know? That's a brindle dog. Back in the old days, when Emperor Qianlong went on hunting expeditions, the lead dog by his side was a brindle. That fierce. Qin Dabong said with a proud look. My Huzi has two unmatched skills. Unmatched at tracking prey and unmatched at going for the crotch. Tang He felt a chill in his crotch. No wonder when this dog had been staring at him earlier, his balls had been clenching the whole time. Qin Dabong drained the last mouthful of liquor from his cup and led Tang He outside. And the two dogs immediately came circling around them. Especially that mastiff. Its fur had been combed smooth, making it look incomparably fierce, and that dangling string beneath it looked mighty fierce too. Qin Dabong patted the brindle dog on the head. Feed it later, then lead it away. If you make your living patrolling the mountains, you won't mistreat a dog. A dog prized most by an old hunter won't be a bad one. Tang He awkwardly felt around on himself. Who carried money when going out in those days? Qin Dabangzi gave a cold snort. Plenty of people wanted to buy Huzi, offering as much as 2,000. And I wouldn't even give them a glance. How much are you going to offer? 2,000. Tang He's eyes nearly popped out. In those days, 2,000 yuan was beyond just a matter of money. It's been with me for 3 years now, and now I can't even feed it full anymore. I can't let it suffer. Just treat it well. Qin Dabangzi looked somewhat sorrowful and went into the house to get the dog bowl, scalded some cornmeal, added mashed potatoes, and stirred in boiling water until it was thin and mushy. Qin Dabangzi personally handed the dog bowl to Tang He, then patted the dog on the head. The brindle dog ate with great relish, raising its head from time to time and wagging its iron rod-like tail at Qin Dabong and Tang He. Village dogs weren't fussy about such things. Basically, whatever the pigs ate, they ate too, often fighting pigs for food. And most of the notches in pigs' ears had been bitten out by dogs while scrambling for food. For the dogs in Qin Dabang's family to get scalded cornmeal and leftovers, that already counted as good days. After the dog finished eating, Qin Dabong personally put the collar rope on it, and then personally handed it over to Tang He. Tang He looked at the brindle dog rubbing itself between Qin Dabang's legs and said hesitantly, Grandpa Qin, you're really giving it to me? Go on, go on. If you're one step later, I'll regret it. Then I won't stand on ceremony. Tang He was kicked out by Qin Dabong. It was obvious he was in a very bad mood. The dog was reluctant to leave home, whining plaintively in a way that made people's hearts ache. It looked back every few steps, and only after the village was completely out of sight did Tang He put on his skates, and under Tang He shouts the brindle dog finally pulled him along in front as they slid toward home. Tang He did have something of a headache, though, coming back from one trip with a hunting dog, his mom would probably greet him with the feather duster.